Burris is an optics company that's built for a reputation right here in the United States for two things. Number one is their no questions asked warranty. It is lifetime, you don't need a receipt, and they will cover it, no questions asked. The second thing Burris have become well known for is their BDC reticles, which they were one of the leaders and innovators in that space, and that was actually one of my first Burris rifle scopes that had the BDC reticle. This is the brand new Burris RT-25, which is a 5 to 25 power front focal plane rifle scope, and this thing has so far surpassed all of my expectations. So let's take a look at what's in the box and we'll talk about some of the features. Inside you have a pretty nice box where you will have the scope and you will have a packet with a lot of the instruction manuals. So the first thing you're going to have a user guide specifically for the RT rifle scopes. You have a standard rifle scope instruction manual. You have a cleaning cloth, and you have a small Allen wrench, and then of course you have the scope. The scope doesn't come with a sunshade or cap. You do have to pick those up separately if you would like to do that. So let's start in the back and then we'll work our way forward. So on the back you have this really nice rubber eyepiece which you would use to set your reticle focus, and that should be the first thing that you do, because if this isn't set properly, nothing else really matters. The way that you would set this is go outside and look at bright sunshine, and you want to make sure that the reticle is in focus and it's nice and sharp. It doesn't matter what the image is, and that's why you're looking at the sky or the ceiling. You just want to make sure that the reticle is in focus for you. If you wear glasses, you need to set the reticle focus. Moving up, you have the magnification adjustment knob, and this is actually one of the nicer ones almost at any price point. So once again, this is a front focal plane 5 to 25 power scope. The adjustment here is really smooth, and what's cool is how Burris how they handled the throw lever situation. So with many of the rifle scopes, if you're going to long range shooting, precision rifle, or any gun games, you will want a quick, easy way to grab the magnification ring and adjust it. Most of the scopes don't come with anything, so you'd have a throw lever that you'd clamp on. Here, you already have this massive lever, and it was already placed in this position by the 10x magnification, and so far it seems to be in a really good place. So if the scope is mounted, it's going to be here at full 25 magnification, 15 and 5 magnification, it's on the other side. If you don't like this positioning, you can move it to any place that you want up here. So once again, this is a front focal plane rifle scope. What does that mean? It means that the size of the reticle will get bigger and smaller based on the magnification that you're on. Who is this good for? Who is it not good for? This is going to be perfect for long-range shooters. If you're doing any range estimation, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a front focal plane rifle scope. The problem with front focal plane rifle scopes most of the time is that while the reticle is useful in the higher magnifications, when you go down, the reticle becomes so small that it's almost unusable. I will say on this one, they just nailed it perfectly. So it's totally usable in 5 power. It's even better right around 8. And it's still not super thick on 25 power. That's one of the choices that designers usually have to make as to where you place the size of the reticle, because if you make it usable in low magnification, on high magnification, it might end up covering the entire targets that you're shooting, especially when you go into long and extended long-range shooting. So here, it's awesome. Reticle-wise, you do have 3 choices. So you have the standard mil reticle, standard MOA type reticle, and you have the SCR2 mil reticle, which is a Christmas tree reticle, and that's what this scope has, and it's a fantastic reticle, making it perfectly useful. Really love playing with that reticle, and I look forward to playing with it more on this scope and the XGR3. Moving forward, you do have a 30mm tube. I know a lot of these scopes in this price range, you probably expect a 34mm tube, but you do have a 30mm tube. oftentimes what that's going to dictate is two things. Number one is how much light is coming into the scope. Number two is how much internal elevation adjustment you have on the scope. This becomes critical when you're talking about going long range and you don't have a canted MOA rail. But with this scope, you have 65 MOA of internal elevation adjustment. If we're calling it roughly centered in the middle, you have anywhere between 30 to 40 MOA worth of internal elevation adjustment that's going to be usable, and that's going to get most calibers out to 1,000 yards and a little bit behind. But that is where the reticle really comes in. Because it's a Christmas tree type reticle, you have an abundant amount of mils in it that you can just hold over rather than clicking in the internal elevation adjustment. As far as the turrets themselves, you have two things that are really kind of nice. So number one, you have locking turret caps. So let's say, for example, you made your adjustment and then you want to lock it in place. You do have locking turrets, something that the Vortex Strike Eagle has and some of the other higher end scopes. With it locked, if you're moving, you're not going to be able to accidentally bump it. The other thing that this scope has is a zero stop, meaning once you zero in for your internal elevation that you need to do, it has a zero stop, a hard zero stop, so you don't have to look at the turret. You know, as long as it goes to the end, it's back on zero. Very, very, very nice feature on here, and it's fairly easy to set. The turrets themselves, they're fairly audible, fairly tactile. So there are some better out there in the price point. I would say these are right around average, fairly close to the Vortex Strike Eagle. So they are a little bit mushy, but they're totally usable. But once again, the saving grace with the scope, and the reason why I don't think if you're buying the scope with the SCR2 reticle, you're not going to be dialing in a lot. You're going to be using the reticle just basically to hold over for your elevation and your windage. This is why I think this is perfectly fine here, especially because you have awesome image quality, and we're going to get to that a little bit more. So on this side, you have your windage adjustment. Same thing, it locks. Not a lot do, so this is actually quite nice that you do, but obviously you don't have a zero stop function on the windage adjustment. On the other side, you have an adjustable parallax. So if you're going into precision rifle shooting, you need to have an adjustable parallax. But if this is your first rifle scope, your existing scope might not actually have a parallax adjustment, as most of those set are right around 100 yards. What is a little bit different with the Burris RT versus some of the other scopes is that there are no distance markers on here. You just have very faint line all the way up to infinity. So this, I guess, also solves a little bit of a situation where one of the complaints with some scopes is that, well, the parallax doesn't correlate to the distance actually shown on the turret. Some other scopes have it. I know some people might be disappointed. I think it's actually perfectly fine. I was able to get this to focus in on, I'm not going to say targets because I was outside and I was playing with our trees, out to as little as 10 yards. So perfectly fine. There's no issues getting it to focus. Okay, and then moving on, you do have your front objective, which brings us basically to the things that really matter. The image quality on here is fantastic, and it is far better. So I think the first words out of my mouth when I looked through the scope outside was like, holy hell, this is actually really nice. And it far exceeded my expectations for this price point and the scopes that this is competing with. So I've looked in sunny days, and I've looked a little bit in overcast conditions. You have very good brightness, good resolution, good contrast. And when you're one of the more difficult parts when you're at the range, if you're looking at a target which is overcast and it starts to blend in, you don't have enough contrast between the background and the target. I didn't have any issues with this one out to about 300 yards. I haven't taken a look at this one further beyond that distance. Otherwise, image quality was actually quite good. As to be expected at this price point and with most other scopes, as you get up into the higher magnification, primarily from 20 to 25 power, you do lose a little bit of brightness. Not super noticeable, but if you're looking at it for specifically, or you have experience with higher end scopes, let's say for example, scopes that are $1,500 and up, you'll quickly notice it. But overall, I mean, for the price point, it's terrific. Bottom line, my first impressions are very, very solid on the scope. I can't wait to go out and actually use it. And I would have absolutely zero qualms about placing a $500-600 scope versus in a situation where I would put a $2,000 or $3,000 optic. It is that good of image quality, and as long as you know what those limitations might possibly be, it's going to be great. And one of the things that I really, really like is that Burris seemingly has put most of the value into the image quality. They might have possibly saved a little bit of money on the turret feel. However, that's totally made up by the reticle, which is truly designed for quick target acquisition and for you to use the reticles holdovers for both windage and elevation adjustment, which this is going to be perfect for. So that is the brand new Burris RT-25 front focal plane rifle scope.